Trump just scrapped the 50% hit on copper ores, but kept it on wires and tubes. Prices have tanked, and new forced labor checks are targeting Chinese metals. What does this mean for electric vehicles in your investment portfolio? Stay tuned to find out how these changes could impact you.
Gary, let's keep it moving. Thing number two, great discussion there on the Fed, Gary, and everything from Chairman Powell. And yeah, hey, my good buddies Troy and Winston, I actually got to do a shout out. They're the co-founders of SAWS, but Winston's actually, he lives in Jackson Hole, got engaged over the weekend. Him and Courtney, his bride. Congratulations, Winston. Maybe you can celebrate with Chairman Powell out there in Jackson Hole. But anyways, all right, thing number two, we're talking copper tariffs, Gary. So saw a lot of movement here in these markets. Thing number two, copper futures plunge following tariff reversal.
All right, so effective on August 1st, President Trump reduced tariffs on copper from the previously planned 50% and just took them down to zero. So what that means is companies can import copper without this 50% tariff. If you don't know what a futures contract is, stick around. We'll talk about it at the end of the show. If you don't know what a futures contract is, please don't trade them. Anyway, moving on. The reason this matters is because the nickname for copper is Dr. Copper. And the reason it's called Dr. Copper is it's really good at telling you what's going on in the economy. Generally, copper is a great proxy for economic growth if you're building buildings, if you're building things, and pretty much anything you build requires copper. And so it's a really good proxy for industrial growth. And one of the things that some really smart economists have done is when we're looking at economies like China, where they deliberately don't report accurate information. And by the way, if you want to point out that the economic reporting in the United States has been accurate, we agree with you. We talked about that in last week's episode. But anyway, one of the things that people do is they say, you know what? I don't care what these institutions or what these government organizations announce. We're just going to look at what happens with copper. And it's a pretty good proxy for growth. So that tariff got removed and copper prices plunged right away. Great. Copper prices on the COMEX, that's the Commodities exchange, were down 17% after weeks of price increases. And then the other thing worth pointing out is that the tariffs remain on semi-finished goods. Those are things like pipes, tubes, wires, other components. So again, Dr. Copper, like, when are you using pipes, tubes, wire? It's when you're building stuff. So that's what's going on there. The one other piece of information on this that's worth relaying is there is some focus on Chinese use of slave labor, that there are parts of China where they're using Uyghurs for forced labor. And there is an effort right now to ensure that in the United States, we are not buying any copper from that part of the world. It's designed to address both unfair trade practices and human rights objectives. You can, I'm sure, understand why we don't want to be buying things that are made with slave labor.
Yeah, no doubt about that one, Gary. Caught me off guard with that. But yeah, so with that last point, Gary, my question is, with this supply chain, right? You look at copper, all different other sorts of resources, right? Why protect just part of the supply chain and not all of it? What's the strategy behind that move?
So I actually think, and I can't believe I'm going to say this, I actually think the government got it right on the policy. I know this is not like me to be, praising government economic policy, but here we are.
You okay? You okay with
that? It's right. Okay. Blink if you're under duress.
Yeah, yes, exactly.
All right. So here's why I actually think they got the policy right. As we just discussed, you need copper for economic growth. You want to build things, you need copper. Okay, so what we want is a free flow of copper into the country, but we also want to encourage domestic manufacturing, in this case, finishing. So what we're saying is, let's make sure we have the raw materials we need for economic growth. And then in addition to that, let's make sure we encourage American companies to make these components like pipes and tubes and wires, things like that. So it actually fits the White House's goal of greater economic growth with greater domestic manufacturing.
Makes sense, and definitely something that's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. And yeah, I know the copper markets, like you mentioned, that proxy is always so curious. Gary, how does that throw off that proxy? I mean, are people still going to be using that in similar ways, or how do you make any adjustments with how closely that had been aligned?
I don't think you have to. It's not, you don't have to look at it from a price point of view. You look at it from a volume point of view,
Okay.
right? So you say, last year you used a certain number of pounds of copper. Okay,
Yeah.
this year we used, I'm making this up,
Sure.
5% more. Okay, well,
Got it.
it's pretty easy to see. Then we built 5% more stuff, right?
Mhm.
Regardless
Right.
of the dollar price of it. Right.
Got
Let's
it.
separate price and value there. So
Makes sense. Cool.
yeah, that's the way
Great
to look
stuff
at it.
there, Gary.